I asked on Twitter, because I completely ran out of ideas for videos, that if you guys tweeted me a good idea, I'll give you a shout out. So at just WWE Girl 14, she told me to do a top 10 of my favorite WWE matches of all time. That's a good idea. So make sure to follow her on Twitter. Look at you, girl, you smart. I've been a wrestling fan since I was 8 years old. That was 9 years ago. And I remember the first time I turned on television watching wrestling, it was a backstage segment between John Cena and Triple H right before the match of Night of Champions. But over the years, I've watched more and more matches. I'm like, oh my god, this is actually pretty cool. And I've watched everything before my time. Your Owen versus Bret, your Steve Austin versus Bret, Shawn Michaels versus Steve Austin, Mankind and Undertaker. All of them. Hogan and Warriors, Steamboat Savage, every great match so far. But the difference between watching all those incredibly just great matches and what I'm watching now is that these are the matches I watched live, I watched in person. So like the emotions were more raw rather than watching a match which I knew was already gonna be good and I already knew who won. So in this video I'm giving you guys my top 10 favorite WWE matches of all time. Number 10, the WrestleMania 32 Intercontinental Championship ladder match. So I know you guys are thinking that match just happened like 2 or 3 months ago. Now for me, this is my first ever WrestleMania I ever went to live in person, and it was the first match of the card, not counting the pre-show because we're all trying to forget right back in Kalisto. Like, I didn't even make it in the building by then. But this is the first time we got to see Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn debut at WrestleMania. There's so many stories that went into it. It was like, you don't know who's gonna win. You kind of have an idea that it's gonna be Sami Zayn, but you kind of think it's gonna be Kevin Owens, but it could be this other guy, it could be this guy, but then we get Zack Ryder. And to me, what I think that was probably the most surprising WrestleMania match of all time, seeing Zack Ryder. Did you hear the words that came out of my mouth? The Intercontinental Champion at WrestleMania 32 in front of 100,000 people. Every part of this match was just amazing. Even Sin Cara diving off the ladder, hitting the rope, and then flipping off the rope. Sin Cara did not even botch that. That's a WrestleMania moment in itself. Stardust bringing out the polka dotted ladder was just like, it's just a good feeling on the heart, kind of makes you feel all tingly inside. The Miz almost winning the title and everyone just booing like crazy. Just the thought that at the biggest WrestleMania of all time, we're opening up with the Miz winning the Intercontinental Championship. The last time the Miz got a big win at WrestleMania, it was the worst one of all time. The pop that you heard for Sami Zayn was just insane. The pop for Kevin Owens, there wasn't a person in that arena that wasn't on their feet cheering for that man. And then you got a close stare off between Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens right before they get into the whole that punching sequence. Kevin Owens hitting the frog splash onto a ladder with Sami Zayn on it. Number 9, Kaitlyn versus AJ Lee Payback 2014. Now this is one of the 2 women's matches I have on this list. It's been a long time in the women's division or divas division at the time. They've seen 2 stars when it comes to women. Now you've seen little feuds here and there for the title, you know, one match here, one match there. It got so bad to the point that they had to put Santino Marella into a dress. But when we saw the feud between Kaitlyn and AJ Lee, it kind of brought that nostalgia to the fact like this is the first women's feud in a long time that's becoming something incredible. Now it certainly wasn't a Trish and Lita situation, but it had the potential to actually be one of those. It really didn't come to fruition how I really wanted it to, but at the time it was probably one of the best women's feuds of all time. Kaitlyn, the big strong divas champion, and AJ Lee, the small but fireball full of like energy and craziness. Kaitlyn had all these mystery notes coming to her, didn't know who her secret admirer was. Then came out as Big E, but it actually wasn't even Big E, it was AJ Lee. I'm like, whoa, they're lesbian, what? In the city of Chicago, one of the greatest wrestling cities of all time. These 2 women put on a match that really make you wish that they were in the division right now. Number 8, John Cena versus CM Punk at Raw 2013. John Cena versus CM Punk is a rivalry that'll go down in history books because every single one of their matches have been great. Right before WrestleMania 29, The Rock is the WWE champion. John Cena, who just won the Royal Rumble, and CM Punk, who wants another title shot. This match was something different because mainly because the spot where CM Punk hit the pile driver, something that we actually haven't seen in a long time. Mainly probably because it breaks people's necks. Makes sense. There's been a few matches on Raw that have been built up to be such a big success that if you put it on a pay-per-view, it would have done fine. And to me, this was just one of those. But at the end of it, John Cena did win, and he actually did a Hurricanrana in the ring, which I think was the first time ever. It didn't look that pretty, but he's like 250 pounds. Give him some credit. Number 7, Kurt Angle versus Brock Lesnar, SummerSlam 2003. Hold up. Wait. I know I said I was only gonna say matches that I've watched live, but this match is just something different. For me, because I actually do amateur wrestling, that my biggest inspirations as amateur wrestlers are the guys in the WWE. Kurt Angle, an Olympic gold medalist who won a gold medal with a broken neck. And Brock Lesnar, who's Brock Lesnar? Enough said? So for me, I always go back and watch these matches because like these 2 guys inspired me to wrestle, so I really just want to learn everything I can about Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar, and what they did in their own wrestling careers. Now this might actually been like the lowest one on the card compared to the one they had at WrestleMania 19 or the Iron Man match that they had on SmackDown. Just some emotion deep down under that's like, this is awesome. Brock Lesnar, who sells great for someone who's that big. I've never seen someone that big that can actually sell as well as Brock Lesnar does. It was a perfect combination of amateur wrestling, just being purely athletic and strength and endurance. I loved it. And that's my favorite SummerSlam match ever. Number 6, Undertaker versus CM Punk, WrestleMania 29. The Undertaker has had a lot of great matches at WrestleMania against guys like Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Albert. But to me, his best one, alongside another one, is him versus CM Punk at WrestleMania 29. It was right after Paul Bearer sadly died. And CM Punk was using all these promos where he's talking about Paul Bearer. He pours the ashes on himself. It's just like, whoa. And then watching the match at WrestleMania 29, there were so many spots I thought that he could honestly lose the streak. Because there was a lot of rumors that CM Punk might actually be the guy to beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. So I was kind of scared a little bit. So every close finish, everything was just so mind-bogglingly amazing. And CM Punk actually hitting the tombstone. Like, we've seen Triple H hit the tombstone on Undertaker at WrestleMania 27. But it's different because CM Punk, he's a lot smaller. And then you have big old Undertaker who's like almost 300 pounds and 6'10", and you can't teach that. Pick up the size of someone like The Undertaker and actually tombstone him without hurting him. Just great. Number 6, Daniel Bryan versus John Cena, SummerSlam 2013. Along with it being probably John Cena's greatest in-ring match, had probably one of the best David versus Goliath stories ever. Along with John Cena versus CM Punk, it was another guy from the independents that was really trying to make his way up and beat the man of the company. And then John Cena going into the match with a torn tricep just made it even better. And along with that, with the finish with Triple H actually hitting the pedigree on Daniel Bryan and letting Randy Orton cash in the Money in the Bank, probably one of the biggest screw jobs in WWE history. Daniel Bryan had been using a running knee a couple of times. He'd be like Bad News Bear, but really didn't know how powerful it really was until it was able to put John Cena down for a 3 count. But you can really appreciate when you see an independent guy get a clean win over John Cena on such a big stage. Number 5, Sasha Banks versus Bayley at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. In my opinion, that's the greatest women's match of all time. This match kind of like set the precedent for what women's wrestling needs to be now. I said before that Kaitlyn and AJ was kind of like a little glimpse of what women's wrestling really could be, but Sasha versus Bayley has cemented what women's wrestling should be forever. The part where she hurricanrana Sasha Banks off the top rope and Sasha looked like she landed on her head. Sasha Banks putting Bayley's hand between the steel steps in the ring before crushing her hand. Or when Sasha Banks had a crossface on Bayley and Bayley's reaching for the rope, but Sasha Banks starts stomping on that. The same hand that was injured. You should wear Macho Man stuff because you are the savage. Number 4, The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, they've had a lot of good matches. Bad Blood, WrestleMania 26. But the one at WrestleMania 25, that's something special. That is what wrestling is. At the time, I really didn't know how wrestling really worked because I really didn't get into the fact like, oh, this is like a storyline. This is like a male soap opera. But that's kind of weird to tell your friends you watch male soap operas. But at the time, the only WWE DVD that I ever had was WrestleMania 25, and I watched that DVD like 100 times. And to see The Undertaker, who I really didn't have a good concept on, just seeing that entire entrance in itself, that told me everything I need to know about who The Undertaker really is. Shawn Michaels descending from the heavens looking like a god. I mean, since him and God lost that tag match against Fancy. Then you hear Shawn Michaels' Sexy Boy theme song come on. That entrance in itself told me everything I needed to know about who Shawn Michaels is. And that's before the match even started. Now, when the match started, oh my god. Every part of that match was just phenomenal. Undertaker diving over the top rope and hitting the cameraman, who's actually Jimmy Snuka's son, if you didn't know that. Shawn Michaels moonsaulting off the top rope, Undertaker catching him into the tombstone. Shawn Michaels kicking out of the tombstone. Number 3, John Cena versus CM Punk, Money in the Bank 2011. This is the second time I mentioned these guys' names, and the exact same thing comes to mind. Local wrestler turned superstar versus the company's guy. A match that had the best storyline going into it. We saw the pipe bomb be born. The stipulation of the match, which a lot of people seem to forget sometimes, that John Cena lost, he would have been fired. The next Raw, John Cena talked about going to TNA.
And if you make me walk tonight, then I will walk on someone else's television show and keep doing this, brother.
If you put John Cena with the right person, he can give you a 5-star match any day. If you gave CM Punk a turtle, he can still give you a 5-star match. Never been a match before that just felt so right. And that match just felt so right. When you think about the finish, it really wasn't all of that. John Cena clothesline John Laurinaitis, jumped back in the ring, got hit with the GTS, and that's it. And that guy right behind CM Punk explains what that match was. John Cena versus The Rock, WrestleMania 28. By the time I was 12, I knew The Rock was a wrestler. Like, I've heard his name around a couple times. Game Plan on Disney Channel. But turns out he was pretty successful in wrestling. You know, he didn't do too much, but he did just a little bit. In a match that we haven't seen that much hype for since Hogan and Rock. The Rock has wrestled Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, and John Cena at WrestleMania. In a match that the wrestling was alright. The match was kind of kind of filled a lot of spots, but just because it's so iconic and you just didn't care. Now, seeing that I was in Miami, 12-year-old me still wanted John Cena to win, and I honestly, legitimately cried when he lost. And I always go back and watch that match, and I always feel that same anger every time watching The Rock win, so I should probably go talk to Dr. Shelby. But a match that can bring that much emotion out of someone, it has to be on your top 10. Now, before I give you guys number 1, here's a couple of honorable mentions. Bryan versus Bray Wyatt, Royal Rumble 2014. Sami Zayn versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Sheamus versus The Big Show, Hell in a Cell 2012. And finally, my favorite WWE match of all time, CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan, Over the Limit 2012. Now, this is around the time where I kind of figured out what independent wrestling really was. Like, I've heard of Ring of Honor. First time I've heard about it is when I was at a Daniel Bryan and Kelly autograph signing. Now, what you guys may see a lot is when you go to like a WWE show, there's always someone from an independent company passing out flyers to the next show, because like, this is the biggest spot full of wrestling fans. Why not? And it basically said the Ring of Honor was going to be in Baltimore October 16th or something, and Maurice is going to be signing. I'm like, I won't meet Maurice, but I don't know what Ring of Honor is. That sounds like a strip club. Until Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, who are basically Ring of Honor legends. Now, Ring of Honor ever makes a Hall of Fame, those are probably your first 2 inductees. These guys have matches all over the country, all over the world, but I really didn't learn about them until I saw this match. This match was like the first time I ever seen a real technical, skilled wrestling match before. I watched Bret Hart at that point, and I was like, okay, he's cool, he wears pink. But to see 2 guys currently giving a match of that type of quality, where you really didn't even need a storyline going into it, because the storyline going into it sucked. Daniel Bryan got the opportunity because he won a beat the clock challenge. There's so many moves I've never seen before, like the surfboard submission hold. I've never seen that kind of stuff before. So to see those 2 go out there and get that type of quality match, it really makes you question why John Cena versus John Laurinaitis was the main event of that night. And to me, that will always be my favorite WWE match of all time. And that is the video. Hope you guys really enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, share, and always subscribe, and we out.